Hi, my name is Aliza Solar. I am a pediatric occupational therapist. I have been a therapist for 12 years now, working exclusively with, children. And now my children that I started with have slowly grown up. So now people are like, oh, you see adults, because I've seen them throughout their lifespan pretty much. But today I wanted to come and talk to you about viewing the whole child for functional performance. Often we look at performance and we look at like one little part. And there's so many elements that go into it. And as an occupational therapist, that's exactly what we do. We look at exactly how a kid performs, does a task. And there's so many elements that go into it. And I want to break it down and kind of looking at some of the important things that for you guys, what you guys are going to look for, what you're going to be talking to therapists about, everything, just to kind of get a better understanding of the whole piece, kind of what an OT will tell you. So what is a functional performance? The ability to complete routine activities of everyday living. Now, that could be anything. I'm going to come and pick up this glass, drink. I'm going to brush my teeth. But what's probably the kid's most important activity is play. It's your number one learner. Do it all the time. So don't forget about play. It is an everyday activity for a kid. So I don't want you to forget about that one. So as an OT, we look at three elements together. The person, probably the biggest one, our kiddo, the person, the task in particular, and then oftentimes we forget about the environment, actually where the task is happening, okay? All those three things go together to figure out how functional performance happens. You never do an activity in a vacuum. You have to have a person that does it, and there has to be an activity when all of them come together. Now, all three of these things, some things will work to help a performance and some things won't. But how can you adjust them to actually get the performance that you want to have? Now, functional performance. It can look beautiful. It could be an NBA star throwing a basket, okay? But we're talking about just doing it, just being, getting what you want. We're talking about that function. We're not talking about being Simone Biles on the any of the apparatuses. We're not talking about that. We just want the functional being able to execute. So we're going to look at that piece. So the person performing the task, the skills, and our individual differences. Nobody is the same. Everybody, even in this room, we all have individual differences that help us with certain tasks and that make certain tasks harder. Two people in this room, I can have you guys do the same task. It will be different. Each of us have our own individual differences. And that's what we all have to learn, is what our individual differences are in our kids, because that'll help us understand how to help kind of get the best performance. But then we have to look at the environment that happens in, the physical environment, table, if I have to pick this up, if this was not super hard, it could be soggy, how big is it? All of these things, the social factor that I'm drinking right now, some sparkling water instead of another beverage. All of those social events, the occupation itself. An occupation, it's a big one. Self-directed functional tasks, every activity that occupies our day. Getting up in the morning, brushing our teeth, all of those pieces. So we look at all three of those things. So let's talk about it from the body. So for every activity, the body takes in information from our senses. Our vision, what we're hearing around us, what we're smelling. That one typically doesn't tell us too much. But what really tells us a lot are the three senses a lot of people don't think about. Okay, and we're going to talk about those. And what all that does is it gives us information about what's going on, sends it up to our brain goes, okay, this is what we're going to do, and it develops a plan and it performs it. And so the body and the mind, the brain, have to work together, and they communicate through our central nervous system, through all those nerves. But it all starts with taking in information, the visual, auditory, olfactory, tactile, our touch, being able to touch the can, vestibular, where we are as we're moving, proprioceptive, where our body is in space. And the one that nobody really talks about too much, that there's more and more research going on, the interoceptive system, which provides information about bodily feelings. If you want to know what those are your feelings of hunger, needing to go to the bathroom, your feelings of your heart racing when you're really worried. Those are those senses. All that information is coming into your brain all the time. And it helps you go, I want to do this task. And it has to take all the information in around you and go, okay, what's our plan? Okay? Most of this happens unconsciously, all the time. There's times that we consciously think about it. Oh, I'm going to pick this up. It's probably, it's half empty. Going to be lighter. The kind of stuff that hits you consciously, and there's stuff that unconsciously you don't even realize, and it just goes straight up to your brain. So the important ones that we really want to talk about are those tactile receptors. They reside in our skin. If you're going to do a task, we're often having to manipulate things. We have to get information from these receptors. There's more around our hands, our lips. When you really feel something, you can tell. So if you have kids' hands and mouth, think of all the receptors there. Oh, I need all this stimulation to know where things are in the world. Well, they're hitting those receptors. They want to figure it out. So those are where the receptors are. The vestibular ones are actually, think about it, they're all in your inner ear. They're all right up in here. They help you maintain your balance. The utricals, sacral, and the semicircle canals, they're all up here, and they are very necessary. If you ever have a kid that starts leaning and it's all of a sudden you know why that's important. If you don't know where you are in space, it's very hard to stay calm and try to figure out how to perform a task. So those vestibular systems really help. And our proprioceptive receptors. It's one we're going to talk a lot about today. So they're located in our skin and in our muscles and in our joints. They tell us where our limbs are in space, okay? So they'll tell me right now my shoulder's up, my elbow's bent, my fingers are a little bit flexed, okay? They give you all that information. You don't think about it most of the time. Your arms can be like this. We don't even think about it. But all the time, those receptors are sending information to our brain about where those pieces are, and they work in groups. Okay, so it's not just one receptor. It's taking in our brain is so cool. It takes in all of it and kind of gives itself the information that it needs. But I want to talk about sensory processing and muscle tone. GREN2B, we know, hypotonia. So muscle tone is the amount of tension or resistance to movement in muscles. So our muscle tone is what keeps us up. Skeleton will just fall. Our muscle tone is what keeps us up and active. While you're sitting, while you're standing, it gives us our big base for all movement. It's those changes in our muscle tone that let us move. So, you can resist coming up. You're activating multiple muscles all the way up. How do I hold myself up? But all those pieces, you're getting information all the time from those proprioceptive receptors, okay? Well, let's talk about hypotonia. That's that lack of the activating muscle tone, right? So you get less information. You don't get as much information about where your body is in space, okay? Fatigue's quicker because you don't have, you need more to activate. You really have a hard time initiating that movement. So it's really hard to get it to even start the movement. So you got that delayed initiation where it's and then we're gonna get to how that affects performance. You have less of that proprioceptive information coming up to the brain to help us know where we are in space. So it seems a little scary too, if you don't know where you are in space, to start initiating. You get poor motor planning. We're going to talk a lot about that. And then you also get some fixing of our posture. So we lean on those joints try to stack in order to be stable, because our muscles fatigue so quickly, we have to rely on the skeleton. So when we do that, all of a sudden to have to pull out of that and activate to initiate takes a lot more work, okay? And it takes time. And then of course, when you have low tone, you have decreased strength, which sometimes can be for certain activities, can make it really hard. So when we talk about all these senses coming together, we have the body and the muscle tone and the sensory pieces working. And the tactile, the vestibular, the proprioceptive, they set the boundary, the skills for those sensory motor skills, okay? We're talking your postural control, your motor planning, your kinesthetic awareness. So when you're asked to and you're in school and they're like, hey, lift your foot up and kick a ball. It's like, well, where in the world is my leg? Where do I bend? Awareness of the sides of our body. How many times are we asked to hold two things together, knowing one's my right side and my left side? How do I get those to work together? Those are all those building blocks, and they come from the sensory system, and they're working with the motor, your body, to get those pieces. So you think about those are the basis of every movement. Okay, when you see babies, I know you guys have a 1-year-old, you only start off with reflexes, and slowly as you interact with the world and you participate, you pick up all these pieces. Your body gets more and more information, your brain starts learning, oh wait, this is what my fingers do, and wow, it actually picks something up. Oh, that's good to know. And you keep practicing it over and over again, and you get a solid motor plan. And then all of a sudden, one day, you don't even have to look, and you're like, oh yeah, I got it. Because that motor plan is solid, okay? So these are the basic solid pieces, the foundational pieces. But then it leads to other more refined pieces. So the eye-hand coordination, ability to hit a ball, that's the biggest one they talk about all the time. But even just, hey, I want to draw this circle. I want to put this cup right where I see it. That's all eye-hand coordination. Using different, my eyes, different perceptions, and a motor piece. Ocular motor skills, being able to control your eyes. Being able to focus on one part, bring them out, be able to focus on one thing, and then go, oh, I know what's going on in the world. See everything, and then be able to focus again. That being able to shift that attention and being able to track. It's all ocular motor skills. It's the next higher level. Postural adjustments. We need to have postural adjustments all the time to do tasks. All of a sudden, something is way down here, and you've got to adjust your posture. All these pieces come together to create higher and higher levels of function. Attention and focus, and of course, our visual spatial perception, which is the next highest. And when you go even higher than that, then you get into all the executive functioning pieces, which we could go on and on for hours and hours talking about. But these core things are the building blocks for functional performance. So I want to talk about motor planning because it's probably the biggest one we see a lot. Motor planning is the ability to conceive, plan, and carry out a skilled, non-routine, or non-habitual motor act in the correct sequence. So, me walking, I got that motor plan down since I was little, okay? But if I were having to jump hurdles, that's a whole new motor plan for me, okay? So it's non-habitual. I don't do it all the time, okay? So as kids, whenever you come up to something new, it's non-habitual. You have to come up with a plan, which means your body is constantly, it's a kind of like calling up. Your brain is constantly going, okay, how do I readjust this? How do I readjust this? It takes a lot of speed to do it with smooth performance, right? We already talked about, if you're not getting those impulses telling you where your body is, you're already kind of slower, delayed on that, okay? So we wanted to know, with motor planning, you have to take those informations, conceive, but the breakdowns can happen anywhere, okay? So with hypotonia, you don't get the quickness of the response. Your muscles don't activate as quickly. So you got little breakdowns. So if you have a plan, I'm gonna pick this up, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm gonna pick it up. Okay, I'm gonna have to reach down and bend, and I'm gonna have to squat a little. My arm's gonna have to come up. You know, it takes, if you're doing it for the first time, there's a lot of accidents, like, oh wait, I got too far. All that takes a lot of time. So I want you guys to like think about it. The first time you're doing anything motor plan, it's constantly taking the time in your body, giving you the input, your brain going, okay, let's change that plan, let's try it again. So, you know, that continual information being brought to the senses, you know, and provided to like up to the second information. I need to know, my body needs to know per second, okay, I'm like an half an inch away. It's kind of giving me that, oh, but get ready, you gotta open up your hand, gotta now close it. It gives you all that information. If you're not getting that information, all of a sudden it's like, okay, my plan's going, oh, wait, I'm here. Oh, wait, my fingers haven't closed. You have all these breakdowns and errors. So what's the number one thing that happens when you have a breakdown and error? You get frustrated. You get so frustrated. It's like, why is this not working? Your brain is telling you, oh. So you know, when people are, oh, frustration, that's the first sign. Sometimes people are like, I don't understand, I don't have sensory piece, that's those sensory pieces. You don't notice those. But when you try to execute something that doesn't happen, it's so frustrating. And, oh, because that's when you get the timing coming off, the coordination, things fall, things break, and it's pretty tricky to like have to navigate that. How do you support that, you know? Well, we have taken by, how do we support that? You work on the body pieces, but you also have to take to account the environment and how you can use it and how you can change it, okay? You want to have, remember, the body's all about learning. It's trying to learn how to get this motor plan, right? Well, how can we support? Well, the environment. Can we change it up? Make the table a little higher so you don't have to bend as far? Make the object a little bit bigger? You know? Can we decrease all the other sensory inputs? So not have any noise, watch the light, you know. How can we support the body in a different way? Kind of those big things. Then we had to take into account, how can we change up the pieces so that, oh, they're like, oh, I got this. It gives a little resistance. Changing up these little things can go, oh, because the more and more you practice it, the more and more you're able to go, oh, I got this. Now I know. Takes a lot of reps to learn something new, right? Probably the biggest thing, though, is internal motivation. If you're constantly frustrated because you don't get it the first or 2-3 times, you lose all interest. It's really hard. So it's all finding that internal motivation. So then, you know, the body was built to be like, oh yeah, I got this. And you motivate, you got what you wanted. But what happens when you don't? You have to make it internally motivating. So the relationship with others, you know, oh, I'm gonna go and do this because I'm gonna get to be with mom. I'm gonna go do, you know, I get to do, you know, my friends we're all playing catch together and like we're together and it's really nice. We wanna use those. Oh, I completed this, like I wanted to make this, I completed it. I got dressed, it's my favorite shirt, I really wanna get into it. Using those big motivators, and I hate to say it, you gotta do it lots and lots of times because it takes practice to go, oh, I get my muscle, oh yeah, because your muscles have to learn how to move that way. What's the pieces? Oh, I'm getting this information, how do I do it? Takes all this repetitive learning. But we want that enjoyment because the more you can stay with it and kind of keep it joyful, the more you're willing to stay in it and learn, okay? So we want to constantly be motivating it. I think some of the best things, if you like toothbrushing was always like the hardest thing, right? Kid liked toothbrushing. And then all of a sudden they came out with changing just the task. It's like, oh, we're going to give you a princess moving motoric toothbrush that like sings you a song, right? And all of a sudden it's like, ooh, I want that with the cherry toothpaste, because, you know, that's motivating rather than Crest on my moving one that I have to move around. But it kind of kept you interested, and that way it's like, oh, I can be here for a bit. Those kind of things, you got to kind of think outside the box of, oh, okay, I get this, and then it's like, oh, then we can work on this slight, ever slight movement of my hand while I have to stand there for 2 minutes at the sink. Oh, you know, then you go like, okay, how can we modify the environment? Let's take a seat. Let's do this somewhere more comfortable. Modifying all these pieces, because then you can sit there and work on the body, on getting that movement piece, okay? If there's a difficulty in one area, you switch the other ones to give you that time to practice that body piece, if that makes sense, okay? Because if you're going, oh gosh, you know, if you're in a horrible environment, you're at a hotel, you haven't been in a while, the environment's all completely different. As parents, you all know, we shouldn't be changing very much, right? We want to make it like super easy for our kids. It's when we're like, oh, we've got the environment, we can modify things and really, you know, it's not the time to be like, okay, we're going to be addressing that you really do this really well when the environment is off and you're in a rush. It's when, how can we change the other things to help the body, okay, to get the motor planning, to work on the activation. Okay, so probably the thing as an OT and as parents and family members, the hard part is being the detective. We're always being the detective, aren't we? Going, okay, what can we change? Where's the breakdown here? How can we support? But really, once we have a good understanding of like our child's individual differences, what we want to work, and then going, okay, can I modify the activity just a little bit? Can I change up the steps? Can I give support here, but they execute this part so they can start getting that motor plan going and getting the repetition? You know, that's how we support them going, okay, I got this part and I can improve my performance. And keeping it something they enjoy. So, things to remember for functional performance. Okay. We need opportunities to perform tasks, okay? If we don't perform, if we don't get opportunities to participate and try things, we never get the input we need to actually learn how to do something. So I always stress participation. Always be doing something. Always, you know, it's like, oh, that's going to be, no, but getting that sensory input, getting that movement, getting all of those pieces is supporting the child in getting the information to start developing it. They may not be independent, they may need support, but they're starting to get the information. They're getting the practice, okay? They have to have time to make the connections and get their brain, because it's got to go up, and then they got to make the plan, and then they got to practice. Never happens right the first time. We all know that. You never execute the thing just perfectly the first time. It's always, every time you pick up a can, it's in a different place. It's got a different feel. It's wet, it's dry. You know, we make adjustments all the time. So you have to think, all of that's all learning every single time it happens. Okay, what does this mean? And, you know, it takes a long time. That's why, you know, we always joke, you know, kids are going to get, you know, we're going to get tired of it way before a kid does when they're really trying to master a skill, is because they have to practice it so much. They're trying to make all these connections. They're trying to pull it off. So kids may pick the same activity. They want the same things because not only, you know, we say, oh, it's comforting, but they're also trying to master it. They're like, I've got these pieces and it's still interesting because it doesn't work the same way each time. So they want to keep mastering that. So we need to do that. Give them lots of opportunity. We also need to give them time to develop a plan. Okay? So often we try to dictate how something's gonna be done. We ourselves have our motor plan. And boy, do our motor plans work well for us, okay? We use them all the time, we don't even think about it. So we look at somebody else and we're like, why aren't you doing it this way? Well, they have a different body. They don't have the same input. They need to figure it out. If we do it for them sometime, well, if we do it for them, what we're doing is going, this is the way you do it. And their body's going, wait a minute, I didn't get all that input. Wait, where did this come from? Giving them time. So sometimes it's sitting and waiting. And I know that can be really hard. It can be really hard sometimes to sit there and go, okay, we're gonna do this. And then waiting. Because we're like, our motor plans sometimes can be really, really quick. Mine's not good for a layup, it takes me a second. But picking up and writing my name, for us, it's not even conscious most of the time. But when we say to a kid, hey, we need you to write your name, and they're like going, sometimes it takes a while to come up with the plan. And if we rush them, what do we just do? Well, then all of a sudden they have to go, think, okay, look at you. Well, that's a motor. I got to think about you. They're verbal. They got to come up with a response. Oh, mom, dad, all of that. That all of a sudden takes them away from what they're supposed to be doing. That takes away and breaks that. So giving them time is really important to kind of come up with how they're going to do it. And don't give them your plan. Sometimes it's actually very funny. You think you have the best way to execute something, and boy, do they come up with a better way. Okay? But they need time and they need practice, and it could look really, I don't say gross, we say icky, the first couple times. And then all of a sudden it starts, you're like going, wait, how did that work? How did you execute that? You did it? Great. It works for you, and you do it. Oh, but then we need practice. Sorry about that. We need practice. The more and more we practice a skill, the more and more input we get. So we want to have lots of opportunity, and it doesn't always want to be the same. We don't want to stick with the same thing. Different textures, different things we're going to try. Why? Because each of those things changes the way our body thinks about it. All of a sudden it goes, oh, it's not, oh, I can only do this type of thing. Oh, wait, I can pick up a bottle. I can pick up, an aluminum bottle, which feels way different than your styrofoam cup. Do you know what I mean? All of those things, it all comes into information. How do you grab it? How do you squeeze it? That's why you'll see kids move things around. Wait, what is this? How do I use it? What does this mean? So we want to keep always changing up the items, okay? So when you're practicing, switch it up. Toothbrush, toothpaste, different environments. Sometimes once they start getting good at something, because you want to have all those practices, because then when they feel really confident, not just in one thing, you give them something new, they're like, oh, wait, I can figure this out. Oh, let me try this one. And it may not look pretty. But then when they start it and they're like, oh, I did it. Half brushing your teeth, where like mom and dad are like, that's not the best job. But they put their toothbrush in their mouth and they kind of moved it around, and you're like, oh, you didn't even get a cup. But they did it, and they're super proud of themselves, and they're like, I brushed my teeth. Yes, you did. You totally did. Okay? But then you keep practicing every day, and gosh, then all of a sudden they're like getting better and better. They still may miss that back tooth, but they're doing it. All of that gets to the functional performance. All kids want to do is perform, okay? So how can you just make it and grade it just a little bit so they feel that, yes, okay? And when you get that, yeah, keep practicing, build off those skills, okay? You mind if I use an example of loose? Getting on a swing.
Aliza is Lucy's occupation.
So
I see her tomorrow at 10 a.m. We're taking a break then.
We're going to sleep in. I told her to go and play outside.
Yeah.
On a swing, it's like, first of all, getting on. Okay? I was like, oh my gosh, we're working on stepping it up. Then all of a sudden, kept practicing and practicing. It's like, okay, we're going to keep going on this swing. We're going to keep going on this swing. She totally wants it. All of a sudden, standing up on the swing, holding on. Let me crack it up laughing. We're gonna swing standing up. Ooh, did she get good at that? She's like, this is my world. I get to move. I'm moving fast. I'm getting all this information. We want that. That joy, okay, leads you to other things. I want to do this. I want to move. That gets back to the sensory system. It gives you that internal motivation. Internal motivation, number one driver of performance, right? So we want to practice those things. So I would love to hear from you guys, kind of, things that, functional pieces that you guys have, or if you have any questions.
Do you want 2 more than 2D boys to take on?
I love them.
Might have some cards. I don't know what session you need.
But any questions about things at home? Every child is different, so I can't be exactly specific.
How do you help them unlearn something? Like we have 2 boys, so our 3-year-old, getting him dressed, like when you were talking about putting the arm, I've noticed with my 7-year-old, after doing it over and over, he now threads his arms through. So my 3-year-old sticks his arms or his hands inside the sleeves and grabs on. And so it makes it super hard. They're just longer, time-consuming to get him dressed because we're constantly unpinching his fingers to get him to thread his arm through the sleeve.
Okay.
Things like that.
He's practiced knowing, okay, feeling the sensation, hold on to something. Favorite toy? Does he love those squishy things? He loves slime.
He does.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
His stuff. Yeah.
Take it, put it in his hand. Don't do his shirts. Do dad's shirts, long sleeve shirts. Have him hold it. Go, ready? You're going to take it through. Why? What are you practicing? You don't open your hand when you're sticking it through. You close your hand, put it all the way through. And then what are you going to do with this cute little bee or stuffed animal? Oh, let's do something cool. Let's throw it somewhere. Do you know what I mean? So we're kind of training that, I know that you know what to do with that. I want this because I need something for my hand. I need that tactile input. Ooh, that feels really good. And then I hold on because, let's give you something else tactily fun to hold on to. So practice sticking it through there. And what are you going to do with that thing? I don't know. I don't know your kid too well.
Yeah.
Toss it to dad. Throw it in the ball pit.
Yeah.
Throw it in the trash. I have a couple kids that throw things in the trash. Anything like that. So what you're giving them is the tactile input he wants. Going through, practicing that same motion. Highly motivating though. I got my cool toy, and then get to put it in. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're retraining it, keeping some of the pieces that we love, knowing that he wants that tactile. He wants to hold on to something. Okay, well then let's keep going. Do you know? And then be like, wow, you did it. Look at that. You stuck your arm through. That was the quickest you've ever done that. You do that 5 or 10 times. What happens? I was like, okay, get a shirt on. You didn't even have your bee. How'd you do that? You got this down. All that. Internal motivation, get the practice. That way you can break down those tasks. But you're right, you have to be kind of a little detective. Well, what kind of input do you get? Why is he doing that? Break it down and shift it.
How about reflexes? It seems like a lot of them are, both of our boys, one of them still right now, but he'll stand more on the couch or something and can lock into position. But if he would start sliding, he'd be locked and just fall right back and smoke his head. And the older boy, he was the same way. Once he was learning he never learned to crawl, to stand up, and then he took quite a few hard spills. So what do you do to
You got to break up those pieces.
that reflex to fall off the body, I guess? Where do
It's
you
a lot of
start with
flexion. A lot of flexion. Over the ball, a lot of ball play, a lot of being, coming down, a lot of going over a bolster. You know, trying to like get that little flexion and grab a ball, go, you ever put it on his tummy and go, oh, I'm gonna get you. Grab the ball really tight. Okay, relax. Grab the ball really tight.
that? Rolling around
You know,
big-
just so he goes, okay, we're here. And then, you want to break those things up. But I can't give you specifics because I don't know your son really well, so I can't be like that. But being able to like engage and then unengage, it takes a lot of like, and you know, for us, we also go, when something happens, we also go, okay, and that's our startle reflex and it's extension. We startle, we go into extension, okay? And unfortunately, we as adults and as parents and as people who love kids go, this kid's going, and we go, well, what do they go? They read us and they go, and they go into extension. So remind yourselves, the more you go, and take and hold on to your breath and go into extension. They're going, oh, that's what we do? Okay. Well, then what do? You lock yourself out. And of course, we can stay regulated and kind of go, oh, okay. We use all of our senses and pull ourselves back down and we stay regulated. We can do a whole other thing about regulation. But pulling that piece in. So we want to be able to practice that. Oh, sorry. Are we out of time? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Only a couple of minutes, that's okay.
Oh, sorry. I just saw other people coming in. But practicing those things. Always be aware of your own affect. We talked about that internal motivation. When we're really tied to somebody, we read them really well, okay? So when a parent goes, oh, you know, and it's so hard, we do it all the time. Kids go, read that and go, oh, I didn't do that, that was just too hard. So we always want to be like, okay, we can do this, we're gonna try again, it's okay. You know, so we always have to remember our own calming breath. I know I'm not supposed to do a parent piece, but and stay centered, because sometimes when we're working on a skill, it's frustrating. Kids can get frustrated, and then we're like, okay, it's like, and taking a second, and it's okay to stop an activity that's not going okay and kind of get yourself re-regulated, because we all know if we're not feeling calm and organized, do we ever really perform well in anything we do? No. And we don't read our bodies really well. And so we need to stay back. So we need to calm it back down, bring it back down to a calming state. And that can't do another person until you do yourself, is probably like the number one thing I always tell parents. You can't regulate another person until you yourself are regulated. It doesn't work. So when they go like this, you know, this is when you have to remember, it's like, you know what? Your son probably, does he love deep hugs? Like coming in, kind of, yeah, it's like, oh, and if I kind of get stuck, and you just come over and just go, and you be that person that goes, when they're stuck, you go, so you can come right back down. Oh, you can come right back down. All of those pieces kind of, you take yourself and your own flexion and just kind of remind them, it's like, oh, this is how you do it? Okay. Oh, I know mom and dad are safe. They know how to, okay, I'm good. May take some therapy and lots of practice. Any other questions?
Do sometimes kids act with different diagnoses, act too careful? Like they don't fall down enough?
Mm-hmm. So there's always a spectrum. Because what happens is, if things are difficult, you can go two ways, and we all do the same. You either go, I'm going to do it, and I just fall, or you're like, I know this doesn't work, I'm going to avoid. I will be the watcher, I'm not going to try this, because it hasn't worked, right? So they kind of take the back seat. And that's why I said, always presenting things. Always, you know, and you go, oh, it's okay. And it's okay to sit and watch. Some people are like, oh, you got to get, no, it's okay to sit and watch with the kid and go, oh, see what they're doing? Oh yeah, they're moving like that. Oh, what if we just do this little part? Oh, you want to do that part? And kind of go, oh. And then when they do that part, they're like, oh, well, we can watch again. Like, what's the next part? You want to keep giving them that opportunity to participate. And it may be like, I don't have a plan, this seems so overwhelming. But when you sit there and you're with that person that is calming and regulating and is with you, and you're like, I'm going to be here to like, see what the activity is. Oh, I know. Let's just try this little part. Oh, wait, we did it. You did it. Then you add a little bit more, okay? And you always want to take their interest into account. So it may be like they're playing with something, they're like, oh, that's really cool. Ooh, but I know you like, can we do that with your Pokemon? Sorry, I have lots of kids that like Pokemon. They're with your Pokemon stuffed animal, and then you kind of build on their pieces. But, you know, to watch and to learn is the beginning steps. They're taking the information in, it's slowly getting them to start executing. And it can start really slow, and then you keep presenting it, and they keep building on it.